G'day guys, this is Adam Cogan and I'll be presenting my talk, The Yellow Brick Road. And this is where I dive into the main features of SharePoint and then I deep dive into the core features that make it an awesome CMS platform. I hope you enjoy it. Cheers. All right, so Yellow Brick Road to public websites. That's our agenda. We will go through a little bit more too. About me, I am the Chief Architect at SSW and most of my time is spent doing software audits these days. All right, so here's the scenario, guys. You have a company with sprawling departments, lots of departments across the country and across the world. They come to you and they say, look, we'd prefer to do this in SharePoint if possible. What is the reason that companies are in love with SharePoint? Why do they bother choosing SharePoint for something like this? I'm just curious. You guys deal with customers? What's some of the reasons they want it done in SharePoint?
Security.
Security. You can make an ASP.NET page secure.
Just easy.
Easier, okay. All right. Can we be a bit more specific? I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just, security. All right, I'll ditch that idea. Anything else?
It's the latest and greatest.
It's all right, latest and greatest. They've drank the Kool-Aid. Yeah, that's what you mean? All right, cool. Anything else?
Empower the departments to look after their own little space.
Right, yes. I'm going to say yes to that, even though I don't like the word empower, but it does. It basically takes the control away from IT, who had the power or the bottleneck of creating stuff. I remember when we went down to Toyota and they'd spent $13 million on a system that all their users kept calling SAP crap, and they told us about this rogue access database that they had developed hundreds of reports in because none of the users could wait for IT to develop reports for SAP. So they started doing it themselves, that type of bottleneck. And with SharePoint, you can set it up so that the end users can create their own website. It's called a sub-site, but they create their own website where they store stuff and they're up and running and they can do it themselves. They're like the access power user. So, all right, what else? I'll call it create a site. You might call it empowerment. Empowerment is almost the same as another evil word starting with C, collaboration. Yes?
I mean, yes.
Yes, Casey.
Hello, Adam.
How are you going?
Everybody. Okay, I'll have my son continue.
All right. Now, anything else?
Enterprise search.
Yeah, some people, we in the old days, we had customers buy SharePoint purely because they just want a search thing. They'd search across their enterprise to find stuff. Anything else?
Integration with Office.
Yes, that is a great thing for some people. The integration, especially now Andrew Coates has just turned up. That's all he cares about, Office and the client. So integrate. Yeah, the browser. He's a funny guy, isn't he? So, yeah, integration of Office is second to none with this system compared with other ones. Any others? What else do you hear clients say?
I had a customer who fell in love with workflows.
Workflows, yes. The good thing about the workflows, well, people want the workflows, and the good thing is you get a few out-of-the-box ones, especially when we're talking about content management. You get some automatic workflows that do the publishing. You don't have to do much. Once you get used to how that works, instead of having a whole lot of steps in your company, you have a whole lot of automated workflows that make things cycle through the company.
Customised templates that live in document lists. Customised templates that live in, so you can have a default document in the document list that's got a customised template. So you say file new document,
yes.
It's got all the bits and pieces, all the customisations.
Right, but I would call that Office integration, wouldn't you?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, the file new, yep.
Document management system, document record and content management system, kind of, but document management was the main reason why people went and basically...
Okay, and so that's true. So basically his point is, some people like it for the document management. Okay, anything else? Forms, okay. It is there, I haven't seen customers in love with it, but...
Excel services.
All right. Well, you mean business intelligence stuff?
No, the ability to expose an Excel spreadsheet as a web service.
Okay.
It doesn't have the VBA stuff.
Yep.
But it has
anything else?
Business intelligence, business data.
All right. I'm just looking for one. One. Any others?
KPI.
Oh no, back of that.
External websites.
Yeah, well, web content management. Okay, that's all I wanted. Or content management system, or whatever you want to call it. It's the only one I really wanted, but it's got lots of other things. Yes, great. So when we talk to customers, and they have a few things that they're in love with, and these are the things I hear. I'll play. Actually, I probably don't even. Ooh. I hope this is the right one.
I'm a PC. And as you can see, Mac is running a bit...
That is the wrong one.
No, it's a good one.
All right.
behind schedule.
Sorry, I was up all night building a website for my cat.
We have a meeting with the clients in 15 minutes.
That was today? I'm a Mac.
And I'm a PC. Are you high? Do you want to lift over, or you going to ride your unicycle?
Okay, so basically it's business-like, gets things done. These are the things that clients have spoken to me about. If it doesn't have Windows integration, no interest. So it must, out of the box, if you look at a number of them, they don't support Windows authentication. They want to just have their users that they've already got, they're not keeping two types. They want to just put them into groups and they're up and running easy. That's a showstopper. They're already comfortable with it, they're using it on the intranet. Tim mentioned this before. They want to use the same thing externally. It doesn't make sense to have all their users learn something different. The content management stuff, the rich editing experience. If I'm specifically referring to this bit, okay? The rich text box. Essentially, they click edit, they do stuff, they save it, it's done. You know, uploading, FTPing and stuff like that. The present stuff. You'll see that there's just a little message here, and I'm not sure if you can read that, but it says you are viewing a draft checked in version of the page, but this page is also edited and checked out to Joe. Okay? So if you say, who the hell's that? I don't know that guy, but I need him to check it in. You'll notice if you click on this little thing, you get this menu. I can tell you that every time I go, this hasn't become completely natural to me. I actually go to open up Messenger and go, oh, I can click on that thing. It happens almost every time. But once you get used to it and come down, you can click on send him a message and you're done. So there's this, publishing. The publishing feature where the customer wants to be able to, if something goes wrong, quickly go back to a prior version. If you look here, I can tell you of the sites we've implemented, I have not heard of a client who's actually gone back to a prior version. But they do like the ability that this is here. And there's another great thing about this page.
Throat to choke.
The throat to choke, yes, the blame. So they love coming here and who the hell did screw this up? You know, was it Tim? Okay, probably.
That's what you get for putting project managers in content.
Actually, there's similar, the same type of thing happens in TFS. You have this thing called annotate where you can see who's changed what. And actually, that was actually called in CVS or Subversion. Subversion. It's called blame. Okay, it's a pretty cool thing. When that feature was coming in TFS, I championed hard that we should call the feature blame, and nobody else thought that was funny or cool. But anyway, I thought it would have been good. But anyway, we should call this blame, shouldn't we? Because that's what it's really for.
Can I compare two versions on the fly to see what difference is?
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
You can see the differences. Yep, it's compare versions. Removing IT's power, which is mentioned before, basically letting them create their own websites. The workflow, we've mentioned that. That's another good one. So you can come through, create your own. You've got this WYSIWYG thing. It's pretty compelling. Like we've created a lot of ASP.NET websites, and we have had this on the list, down the list, but you almost always get to the point where you just don't implement the workflow stuff because you run out of budget. And if you do, it's XML files and they can manually modify this to make things work, or tables and stuff like that. So this is great, and if you want to extend that, obviously you go to workflow in .NET 3.5. Okay, I'll skip over that, but there's one little problem in workflow. Anyway, you kick off the workflow and you're good to go. This is a showstopper for us. If it doesn't support .NET, we're not interested because we are .NET developers, and obviously most of you are too. This is one of our guys in our office, John Liu. That's his little kid being introduced to the important things in life. Another one was mentioned before. It's already been sold. A lot of CIOs have been sold. Well, yeah, SharePoint might not be perfect, but Microsoft are putting a heap of money into it. It's going to be good soon, so let's go with it already. And they do say that. And it has this thing. It is Microsoft's fastest selling server product ever. $1 billion worth of licenses done within a year. So it's pretty compelling. And there's lots of other things, and I won't go through it, but there's lots of other stuff, and everybody has their own type of reason. What they don't tell you is the development overhead of using SharePoint instead of ASP.NET is enormous. Doing small things like customizing a menu, big task. Using virtual machines, pain in the neck. Deployment is difficult, and debugging is ridiculous. So I'll talk about a few of these things. Any questions so far? Good. So here's your first experience debugging. You come through here, and if you read it, you'll see unable to display the web part. To troubleshoot, open this in a SharePoint services compatible HTML Office editor, such as Microsoft Office SharePoint Designer, and see if the problem persists. Let me tell you, it does persist. And then contact your web server administrator. Well, that's me, so what am I going to do about that? All right, so then you learn how to debug. And what you do is you find this Hive folder. I'm not sure why it's called a Hive. It's called a Hive probably because it's like a nasty hornet's nest. So you come in here and you see all these text files. And one of these text files is a 6 meg file. Some are smaller, but they're big. You open these text files up and you see all this. Here's my, you find the lines of text here. You find something about web parts here. You find some cryptic error code. The stack trace is over here. And long story short, you find this error where it says the web part. So long story short, the list does not exist. It's a big procedure to find out these things. They don't want idiots being able to find out what's wrong. Okay? So I'll come back to that and give you a few tips on debugging because it's not always as bad as that. The next thing about this is I want to ask you, look, there are a lot of companies that say, oh no, I don't want a SharePoint site. Why do they say I don't want a SharePoint site?
Because they look the same.
Yeah, because they look like SharePoint. That's bottom line. And actually there is this guy, he's a Kiwi, top websites, public websites or something. SharePoint, top public SharePoint websites, something like that. Here he is, he's a Kiwi. In New Zealand, most Kiwis count sheep. This guy counts public sites that are done in SharePoint. So he's done a little website, and this says what you just said. That looks like SharePoint, that's for sure. He's obviously not a skilled designer, but he would have got this thing up and running very quickly. Anyway, there's lots of these companies, and there's hundreds and hundreds and thousands, but he's got his top 100. So you can click here, and he's gone through and he's told everybody what are the best looking top 100 websites out there. We'll soon find out. So I'll just pick one. Try and pick a. Gee, which one? All as bad as each other, eh? I'll go with this one. So, anyway, let's have a quick look at these are the best ones, and I'm going to tell you about. Well, you can see it, SharePoint. There's pages. Let's see how good it looks. Just going to move that one over here. Here we go. It has the standard SharePoint boxy look. Oh, it's got this silly name control up here. That is actually for content editors, essentially. I don't know why it's there on the web, but that's how it is by default. That's why it is there. So you can see bits and pieces, but I want to kind of show you the reason that I don't like it. If you come into Tools and you look at, I'll go and get the IE Developer Toolbar. If you're using Firefox, it's called Firebug. This is just as good, and in IE8 they've really caught up. But I'll just come through, I'll pick a piece of content. Let me just pick a piece of content. There's a piece of content. You'll see that the problem is it's very table heavy. There's a table. See it flashing there? There's another table, number 2. Okay. Number 3. Gee, there's a lot of tables. That's in the same one, so it's a web part. 3. 4, another one. 5, yeah, but endless. Anyway, this guy loves tables, obviously. But this is 6. Gee, I think it's never ending. Table after table. But you get the idea. It's still flashing. But there's table after table. I'll just show you, I'll give you an example of what we did on this. IE Developer Toolbar, I'll pick a piece of content. Actually, I could even pick those menus. Oh. Okay. Where are we? Can't actually see where it's. Oh, there it is, P. But you can see these are all divs. There's divs, and that's the end. So there's a whole series of divs there, and I'll talk to you about how that was done. Okay. All right. So the first thing people don't like about SharePoint is because of the look and feel. They're not cool like these guys. So the things to help with look and feel, there's a few things. I'll talk to you about the IE Developer Toolbar or Firebug, Notepad, some unwarranted styles, preset styles, that name DLL that pops up, designers versus developers. These are the things that you can fix about look and feel. The first thing is make sure you're using the IE Developer Toolbar or Firebug. Okay, almost everyone in our company uses Firebug, but they're pretty equivalent. The cause of ugly sites, you're not going to believe it, it's never the designer, it's never their fault. It's not the developer, it's actually the content editor, believe it or not. And let me just explain to you why I say that. If you come on here, even if I come on here, you can see, let me just close this. I don't know if this is going to be a great example, but when you go onto sites, you'll find that they've got this bit in bold, and see that they've put a heading here in bold, and probably when this came out, it wasn't looking different. They've changed the colour of this box versus that. They've all got different colours, and maybe that was as it was. But you'll often find some bold here. Someone put something important in red because they thought it was important, a warning or something. And so we were finding that as well. So we did something beautiful. Their content editors start adding things, and they start putting a whole lot of different fonts or styles to make certain things stand out. So what we did is we taught them about their first tip. We taught them about Notepad. Why did we teach them about Notepad?
Microsoft Word format.
Yes, the Microsoft Word format. So essentially they were copying stuff from Word or emails, go copy. I'll probably give you a good example. Let's just say I put some headers here. There's not much. Yeah, I'll just copy a little bit of text. There's nothing much here. And I will copy it into Rad controls. Where is he? The
Editor.
must be blind.
Mine.
Thank you. Okay, so I copied into the editor, and it looks absolutely horrific. And there is a reason I'm showing you this editor. Do you want to know why?
Because this one has a button copy from Word and straight text and stuff like that.
Great. So this is much better than the built-in editor. Oh goodness. Did I just choose the wrong one? Editor, there we go. Oh, default settings. So I'll come in here and I'll just paste what I have in my clipboard, and you'll see this is a nice guy. Obviously this is very nice. This is their sample text. I'll just delete it all. Well, actually, I can probably look at the HTML and you'll see that it's quite nice HTML. That's nice HTML. I will come in here and I'll select that text, delete that, paste that. Would you like to clean that word for me? If I said no, it will paste it. I'll look at the HTML and it's absolutely horrid. So what I'll do is I'll fix that up. I'll come back here. I'll delete that and I'll paste it again. Would you like to? I say sure. Now, to my surprise, it's still pretty bad. It cleans it up a bit, but not as much as I was hoping. So, long story short, you've got to teach them what you do. All you do is very simple. This copy there, then copy again, paste into here, and that's what you want. And then it will look beautiful. Okay? So it's a bit of a pain in the neck. There is a better solution, and that is to install this on the client side, which is pure text, which basically just sits in the tray down there and copies. In addition, it plays a beautiful sound every time you use it, so you can just annoy everybody around you. Okay. Hot tip. All right. So you can use pure text or you can use the RAD editor. I'm not so happy with the... Oh, by the way, the RAD editor is awesome. It's pretty good. It's much better than the built-in one, and you can plug that in. In addition, Teller give you a free one. Of course, it's crippled. A few features are missing. Can anyone guess a feature that might be missing? Strip out Word. Good. So you end up having to pay for it anyway if you want it. We did consider the accessibility toolkit, but we haven't found a single site out there using it, and we didn't want to be a guinea pig. So that was it. The next version basically fixes a whole lot of accessibility problems anyway, so we'll wait for them.
The little pop-up windows wouldn't be very accessible.
Say again?
The little pop-up windows wouldn't be very accessible.
Yes and no. Why do you say that?
Well, have you tested it with a screen reader?
Have I tested with a what?
Screen reader.
A screen reader? No, I haven't.
The Apple with the 7 parts.
Yes. Yeah, all right. I'll answer that in a sec. Just let me come back, because I do address that. So, the next thing is to disable a whole lot of options. So we disable a whole lot of options, and basically if you come in here, if you look around here, see this color of font? So we've stopped them from putting red where they want. We've stopped them from inserting tables. We've stopped them from basically doing anything that makes it look ugly. So they don't get very much. What they can do is they can choose a few styles from here. So they're not at liberty to screw up the text and make big fonts here and little fonts there. You'll see, having said that, I'll give you an example of, I'll go to economics. See, that's got a trademark because they came up, economics, do you get it? It's pretty cool. Well, you can trademark that if you...
Well, there's already an issue there. The two brains look different.
Ah, yes. Good. So let me just show you this. We stopped them from doing lots of different things, but we did allow them to put the little TMs. But Wally Parsons is it's a big company, switched on, got a whole series of designers and developers really. When they want to do something and get around our rules, guess what they do? They make an image. They put it there. So that's quite humorous. But anyway, they have to go to some trouble.
Can they just go and edit the HTML, raw HTML?
Can they get around it? I'm not sure the answer to that. Do you know the answer to that?
You can disable the HTML file.
We could, if we were determined, put a workflow on it so that it can't, and we could strip it out for them. But I'm just wondering, can they get around?
I'm not sure. I mean, there is that remove inline styles there, manually remove stuff, which is a little bit like removing word stuff.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Actually automatically prevent someone from modifying HTML directly.
Yeah. So I think they could get around it that way, but we could stop it if we were determined. But anyway, so the bottom line is we give them a few choices. They can choose that trademark. They can choose a few things, but that's it. And I think it's fairly important to limit it like that. How to do it? Well, basically you go into SharePoint Designer, you open it up, you go to the main style CSS, you modify a little bit. You'll see what we've done is basically in these, you can see pull out quote, there's the trademark one I was just referring to, and that's what it looks like. Okay, so that's how you modify that. Now you could, if you wanted, you could go to the web version of it. See, the problem is most of the developers try to avoid SharePoint Designer, and even the designers don't enjoy it. It's a little flaky, it has a few bugs, it's not as good as, say, Visual Studio, it's a bit different. So you can do it via here, and you could come into, if I go back a step, you'll see that it's in the style library. So if it's in the style library, there's the main style CS. You can come here, site actions, view all site content, go to the style library, edit the file there. But you then have to save the file and have a manual step where you need to deploy it. Okay? So just be aware of that. The next one is you need to remove this name DLL, and I'll come back to how you do that a little bit later, but you've got to be aware of doing that. And the next thing is the designers. So we have a bit of a process that we go through, and I'll recommend because it works for us, but basically the designers do the Photoshop. They give you PSDs. We call that the concept mock-up. So they give you concepts and they want you to apply it by that. Then we slice that into HTML and images, and we call that the HTML mock-up. And then we make all the CSS, and that's called HTML styling. And then we give it back to the developers to go and do the real work. So here's the problem. The designers have spent a lot of time getting their Photoshop perfect, and they want developers to represent their hard work in HTML exactly, basically. And most of them don't have a lot of experience with web and all the limitations of web, and they can create a lot of problems. They can think, hey, that looks bad. They have reported 1 pixel out of alignment before with us. Yeah, that's right. And there are a few of those, and let me explain it. So they basically will tell you that that's not okay, you've got to fix this, etc. And a lot of these problems are almost unfixable or an awful lot of work. They will tell you that images are no good because they're a shade off, you know, they don't care about your compression reasons and stuff like that. But so and rather than the developer do it and then send an email saying done, this is what it looks like, they send, oh no, and this goes back and forth via days. We only had 8 weeks to get this done, and there was a there was a deadline that was non-movable. So we try to avoid this designer versus developer. We try to get the developers and the designers to sit next to each other, and that is the only time we really see designers, switch off a little bit or become a bit more reasonable. And so they will say, all right, so they can see what's going on, they'll let that 1 pixel go, they'll let that 1 shade of colour go off, because they're sitting right next to each other. So, the end result.
I'm a Mac.
And I'm a PC.
I can make cool videos, record music.
Yeah, and I do all that boring stuff.
I sometimes do work for PC when he needs something hip.
Oh, yeah, that reminds me, it's payday. There you go, Mac.
That's it?
Well, I'll explain to those boring old spreadsheets that I like.
Well, how am I supposed to pay my rent?
Oh, well, you could make your landlord one of those really cool movies.
All right. So, this is the Photoshop that the designers gave us. That's the PSD. See that? They want it exactly the same. That's what it ended up being. It's not exactly, but it's pretty close. Before, after. You can see there's a little bit of difference around. We were pretty happy with that. That is the Photoshop beforehand of the menu. And I can tell you, when we first saw this, I heard Tim trying to convince the client about the bad idea of putting these images there, because that's not in the default menu that SharePoint gives you. So to put those images there is a lot of work. And we had a lot of work. That's a huge site. It goes extremely deep. And that is just, you know, a nice to have, those pictures. But they said, bugger that, you'll do it exactly. They had no understanding. And they said, find out a way. That's what we want. So that's what they asked for. That's what they got. Asked for, got. And you can see it's pretty close. Close enough for us, our liking. Not exactly what they wanted, but good enough. Okay, so let's talk about under the covers what went on. I'll just tell you very quickly. Basically, there's a site definition. There's a series of page layouts. And the sitemap, you can kind of see that there's a whole series of projects, a whole series of countries, and one project can go across multiple countries. We had 7 page layouts, 1 master page, and they're at the root level so all the subsites can use them. So let's just look at what goes on each page. So if you look at how are you going to structure, if you, let's just go back to the home page as an example. So they send us this mock-up, and while the designers are doing this, the SharePoint guys have got to work out how we're going to structure this page, or what's the page layout going to be like. And so if you look at this page, you've got to work out what web part zones and how many web parts there's going to be. Can anyone, if you just look below the menu, this chunk here, what are you going to, how are you going to divide that up? How many web parts in here, guys? What? 2? 2 web part zones. How many web parts? There's a web part zone. There's a web parts. What have we got? 4. We've got 4. So that's how that page is structured, basically. So you've got 4 web parts, 2 web part zones on that one. And then we've got a whole series of others, because there's, you know, thousands of pages to be migrated. We had a basic page, which had 4 web part zones. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, the yellow guys. We had a wide page that we use sometimes, and that had one web part and 1 web part zone. We had, this was kind of done by itself. This was almost like a home page itself, and it's just got 1 web part zone. You got an event page layout. There's no web parts here. You got a news page, 2 web part zones here. A project page. All right. So that's kind of how we structured those page layouts. You've got to work out that. But we made do with 7 web parts, 7 page layouts to deal with you know, a lot of content. That's all you really need. That's just a few of them. All right, next issue I want to talk about in terms of making things nice is tables. So tables are not beautiful. Tables are quite inflexible. They are limited to columns and rows. They're fat. They make the pages load slower. And you've just got a lot of stuff to read all the time. Does the SharePoint team know the evilness of tables? Do you think they know about this? They have no clue. They never heard of any of these issues, I don't think. So basically, understand this if you're dealing with SharePoint. Web part zones equal tables. And menus equal hideous tables. They are horrid and fat. So when you look at a menu, let me just try to find a menu so I can just demonstrate that. That doesn't have a proper menu. What is a site with a menu? What was that top public websites? Oh, is it? There? Oh, beautiful. So let me just find one and try to show you. Oh, SharePoint conference. You'd hope that's going to be a good one because that's demonstrating it. Oh. But that is good. Oops. All right, that's no good one to show. What's got a menu there?
There was a few SharePoint ones right at the top.
Adam, I've actually got a menu in mine and I haven't actually cleaned the tables out of it.
Oh, is it drop down?
Yeah.
Okay.
So left navigation I have put clean adapters on, but the top navigation I haven't. You got the
So I'll just show the developer toolbar.
So this is a bad example. I wouldn't usually do this.
All right. So where do you want me going?
So the
Just there?
consulting services you can see.
Oh, so there's the menu.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I was to click on this, I'll just click on the menu. I'll click on our vision. You'll see that what you have there is a whole lot of table details, table bodies, table details, and you know that look, there's a row for every single one of these. And this, you know, on a big menu like Wally Parsons is a lot of bloat. What you really want is something like this, and I'll just show you what I'm referring to. Does anyone? How many people know what I'm going to show? ULs and LIs. How many people know about that? ULs and LIs? Just 4? Okay. So if I just come in here, I'll show you what I'm referring to here. See these menus? So I'll just click on here. You basically want your menus to be ULs and LIs. And that's done. But that's not done in the box with SharePoint. So I'll talk about that in a sec. So that's what you don't want. If you want to make your site load a tiny bit quicker, change this. So my feeling is that the SharePoint team put table-based layouts and web design efforts back 8 years. So hopefully they'll fix that. It doesn't matter how you dress a table up, it's never cool. Okay, so this is how you do it. You use the ASP.NET control adapters because it's not that hard. Basically, you have this snap-in architecture that you use these .browser files. And at the end of the page lifecycle, the render event fires and you clobber what was there. Okay? So
you're still building it exactly the same way, but it just renders it differently.
In the render event, you change it to ULs and LIs. Okay? So now what that did is that changed all the web part zones to be divs, and it changed all the menus to be ULs and LIs. So we're happy with that. The problem that we weren't happy about is we have no tables, but we have no pictures. There's where we're up to.
I believe tables were used by the designers of SharePoint as an easy way to basically put everything in order, if you like. Does it work? Try it like that, like if in render menu you override, just write a parser which will replace all the tables with divs?
Yeah, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I guess basic the web part zones are pretty much fine in divs, and what you do have to do is modify your CSS files to make sure the layout comes out as you like it.
But still, I would imagine it involves a lot of knocking around to place it correctly, because tables are rectangular. You know what I mean? Just input it and
well, I find out of the box, the web part zones work straight away. All of the layouts and web parts where you've got, you know, as say that on that homepage on Wally Parsons, where it had those 3 web parts down the right-hand column. You change this to use the web part zones with divs, and it just works straight away.
So there's another reason apart from just not liking tables, and it's not just about we are that fussy that we just have a mental problem with tables and that they shouldn't be used for layout. It's very hard for designers to style things, and in addition, it's very important for our site to feel alive, and we get that alive feeling with JavaScript and more specifically JQuery. So I'll talk about that in a sec. But anyway, that's where we're up to. It's non-negotiable for us because we can't make a good site without it. Okay, so let's talk about coming alive. The best way of coming alive is to put a lot of JavaScript. The problem with JavaScript is it makes a site fragile. So how do you get around this? In addition, you've got to write JavaScript and you've got to test it for multiple browsers, which is really friggin' painful. jQuery. jQuery is the Microsoft's, well, actually it's not Microsoft's, but they might claim it these days. But it is the write once, run anywhere. It's the Sun promise all over again. So this jQuery is good. It's been given, it's open source, so that makes it good, doesn't it? It's been given the thumbs up by Microsoft. Developers write less code. They basically can write one line of code which can go against a whole set of divs, and that's what they're after. So my analogy here is Link is about selecting objects and jQuery is about selecting HTML elements, okay? And I call it the sequel of JavaScript because when you do, the sequel of JavaScript because when you do SQL, you do a where clause and then you do, update these records. So, one line of code can affect a lot of records. jQuery, one line of code can, affect a whole series of divs. So, in addition to that being cool, it also gives you an animation framework. Now, I guess we could write an animation framework and you guys could too, but you never get around to it. And the animation framework gives you the fading in and the fading out. You saw, you saw a few, this thing, fading in and fading out. Is it fading in and out? Yeah, there it goes. Okay, so that type of timer, you have to put a timer to make that type of stuff work. So that's painful. So jQuery gives you that. Now, you will still have to test. Basically, the only times when you have problems with is not the JavaScript not working, it's just things out of alignment. So all the fixes that you make when you test is basically CSS fixes. Now there's one big bonus to using jQuery. Can anyone think what it is on top of all this?
IntelliSense.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you get IntelliSense and stuff like that, but you get IntelliSense in JavaScript.
Works in every browser.
Works in every browser, yes. Take that a step further. Yeah, my wife, I found out this week, has been very unfaithful. She bought an iPhone. And she knew that I was going to be upset by that. And she knows that she can barely use the internet. And she thinks this iPhone thing is the coolest thing ever. And I'm not sure why, because she can barely push the buttons on the front screen. But she just thinks it works so beautifully. She's got her emails coming to her. She's just in love with this stupid device. And so the big bonus is, works. We never tested on this. Actually, I probably, if I had a thought of this, would have made a rule, never test in this stupid iPhone thing. But if you turn it on its side, it even moves and it all works beautifully. I can't say that about older sites where we didn't use jQuery and stuff like that. Now to talk about the animation stuff, which was asked before, remember this? Where did I go before? Oh, let me just take this thing off. Remember this guy? So imagine you've got a whole lot of JavaScript on the page. This type of thing, is this going to work? You don't have a mouse on an iPhone. Not last time I checked. But when you click there, that's going to pop up. The only time where this isn't going to work properly is if you click and it has an action that goes through to another page. You never see this because it'd be going through to the other page. So I guess you can start thinking about how to design for an iPhone if you really cared about the nobody's going to use an iPhone in any way to browse the web, are they? Do you use an iPhone? Anyone use an iPhone to browse the web? Oh, all right. Well, forget that statement. All right. So, I never use my my Windows Mobile 6 to browse the internet.
I wouldn't either.
I gave my wife a Windows Mobile 6 device, and I didn't even get a thank you in all these years. And she goes and gets her own stupid phone, and she won't stop yabbering about it. Anyway, she takes it to bed. Anyway, let's look at an example.
Right, and you got your laptop in bed. So
All right. So this is how you implement jQuery. There's 4 simple steps. The first thing is put a reference. You have to put a reference to this thing. Okay? To that. And you've got to decide, are you going to put that reference in the web part, the master page, or the page layout? Who would put it in the web part? Page layout? Master page? Okay, everybody said master page. That's interesting. What's the disadvantage in putting the master page? It's there when you don't need it. And there is a problem. So we had a couple of choices. We started off with the web parts, but as you start putting it in more and more places, it's just simpler to put it in the master page, and then it's easier and it's less code. But if you were worried, or as we were in the beginning, we put in the web page, in the web part, there is another problem. When the web part's on the page a number of times, that JavaScript file is there multiple times. There is a way of fixing that. How many people know how to fix that? It only came out in ASP.NET 3.5, and that is, is to use the script manager and the script proxy. Okay, so basically this thing will, when the page renders, work out if there's duplicates and get rid of the unnecessary ones. Okay, so you can do it that way. It is just simpler to put in the master page. If you are using a web part, you can put it in the XSL. That's another way of doing it. All right. The second part. So the first one we've got a reference. Just out in the master page is simple. The second one is to fix up the XSL. Yes.
Did you say you didn't want it in the master page because you didn't?
Yes, that's right. I'm just saying, look, if you're trying to be a purist, you would put it in the web parts only where needed. So let's just think about this. On this page, let's go back. On the home page, we're only using really jQuery. Well, the main reason is this, in this web part. So should it be in this web part or the whole thing? Well, you know, in this case, you might only want to put in that web part if that's your main part where you're using, you know, silly being on all the pages, especially when you've got a huge site and you want performance. You know, you start doing, the optimizing performance step means that you move it out of the master page and you put in the web parts. There is another hot tip. I'll give you a hot tip. I'm not sure if anyone's thought of this. But you could, look, what are we talking about here? We're talking about downloading that JavaScript file.
16 kilobyte.
I don't think it's 16 kilobyte.
It's the minimum version of JQuery?
Yeah, I don't think our one is 16. Yeah, we want the whole thing. Yeah, we're going to put it in. We want the whole kit and caboodle, and we want all the movement. Might show you Microsoft SharePoint. Just go into it. I'll just try to find you another example, because I think this coming alive thing is quite important. What is it? Abs sessions, maybe? Ah, bugger. Anyone know what it is? Agenda? Oh, here we go. So this type of, you know, if you want the whole kit and caboodle, you're not going to get this type of effect. Okay? Which, you know, saves a lot of trouble. So anyway, but we're talking about avoiding the user downloading it. Can you think of a way that you can give them jQuery but not? Where is jQuery housed, Justin? Don't you? Google. So you could put the reference to the Google one. Is that a good idea or a bad idea?
When Google is down.
That's the most random. All right. Well, who thinks that's a hot tip?
Sorry, what's that again?
I'm saying reference the actual original jQuery file on Google.
On the first page load.
What?
You're going to use it most likely on your home page. You go to the home page, you just cache it for the next time you get any other page.
Of course, it's cached. But to avoid that, why not just use the one on Google servers? And then if all sites were using that, there'd never be a hit across all sites. I think that's a hot tip. You guys are...
When they update their version?
When they update the version, well, we have jQuery hell, I guess. You know, we update our site. Yeah, all right. Anyway, so the next thing to do after you've referenced your jQuery is we have to learn XSL. So we've got to learn XSL to, well, we've only got to learn a tiny, tiny bit of XSL. What have we got to do in the XSL? What? Loop. I can't hear what you're saying. Looping. We've only got to change one thing in the XSL, and that is basically to switch it from using tables to divs. Okay? So, what you need to do is do this. See the red? Change that red to be the green. And you've switched from tables to divs. Okay? So, what we've put the reference, we've made divs. What's the next bit? Learn jQuery. Okay? So it's just a simple step of learning jQuery. It's probably, I'm probably exaggerating, but how many people here know CSS? So we've got 2/3 of the room know CSS. How many know jQuery? Less than a quarter. Okay. Well, once you know CSS, you know jQuery. So essentially, you've got these series of divs. You've got CSS. If you want to change all those divs to be a red border, one line of code, div.newsItem, red border. If you want to change all those divs, and there could be hundreds, to fade in and fade out, it's one line. One line affects it all. So it's basically manipulating sets using CSS-like selectors. So in that example that was on the Wally Parsons homepage, which was the news, basically, you configure the content query web part to return 5 records. You write some jQuery to select those 5 elements. Write some JavaScript to iterate through them and adding an animation. And now you've got a site that's alive. It's not much work. Add the reference, fix the divs, add some jQuery. So that's how we did it. We include the JS, content query web part, the item style was fixed. jQuery is learnt, and add interaction with fading and fading out. Okay, so let's talk about menus. Okay, this is a terrible menu system. This is a good menu system. Okay. So, how do we? And the only reason it's good is it's got those nice little icons. Now, how do we put those nice little icons on? Well, unfortunately, the ASP.NET menu does not support putting pictures in. So you have to go to the SharePoint. Well, basically, you have to overwrite in the render event, like I mentioned. Query the SharePoint object model, pull out the image URL, and plonk it on there. That's how we did it. Next part, we've got the menus working. We've got things coming alive. We need to use web parts. Now, our guys, a couple of years ago, only knew ASP.NET controls. So, how many people here are quite familiar with the web parts in SharePoint? Used to them. Okay, so we've got a few. For the rest of you, how many of you are familiar with the controls you get with ASP.NET? Okay, so that's almost all of you. So, that's where we stood some time ago, where the guys knew ASP.NET controls, didn't know which web parts are appropriate for which tasks. So let's just talk about knowing the web parts. So you look at these web parts and you try to work out which ones you need to use and which ones you're going to need to customize. ASP.NET, you get the whole toolbox there of controls. They're pretty simple. If you're a professional, I guess you go and buy some third-party ones. If you want slick controls, you buy the Telerik ones. If you want really slow ones, you buy the Infragistics ones. Okay, so the ASP.NET developers do their bread and butter by developing user controls. Very rarely they'll develop custom controls. You don't get the designer, stuff like that. Is that fair enough? Oh, Google website is down. So, all right, my experience, everybody does user controls day in, day out, and we sometimes do custom controls. So that's the old way of doing things. The new way is to use the right web parts and then write some extra ones if you need them. So, be aware that web parts compared with ASP.NET are basically, they're like custom controls. They're hard work to do. They're difficult to test because you've got to deal with these SharePoint errors. Okay? So, web parts. You get a lot for free in SharePoint. And actually, I'm going to play a little video that I think reminded me of the web parts.
I'm a PC. And as you can see, Mac is running a bit behind schedule.
Sorry, I'm late. Was up all night building a website for my cat.
We have a meeting with the clients in 15 minutes.
That was today?
Are you high? Do you want a lift over, or you want to ride your unicycle?
Okay. All right. So what do you get for free? Well, these are the main ones you're going to deal with. I just realized that that video was for the wrong part, but don't worry about that. What do you get for free? The content editor, you get a content query in the data view. All I want is a grid and a rich text box and a list view, I guess. So the content editor is the rich text box, the content query is a free-flowing list view, and the data view is the grid. And the data view is basically for devs. So this thing is the content editor. It's a pretty simple control to use. This thing is when you use the content query web part. See there's no columns, so it's not, the data view is not appropriate. There's no page numbering, paging. This is the data view. Okay, they're the controls we used in those positions. So let's just talk about how these web parts work. And they don't work exactly as you might expect, but you get a lot for free. So you set the query, and the content editors go ahead and start using this. So here's a content editor, no developer required. They come through, they select the query or the source of data. They select the item type, any type of filtering, and they're done. No developers needed. I'll tell you something quite amazing. See this grid, see this control over here? Do you think it shows all the properties? No. And how do you think you get to see all the properties that are hidden behind the scenes? You scroll down to the bottom? No, Jody, that's not how you do it. You hide the arrow? No, can't find them there. Export. You're not going to believe it. You have to right-click, export to a text file, modify this XML, and then import the thing back. And if you got one tag wrong, you're screwed. Pretty amazing. Obviously, the SharePoint developers didn't even think that you could develop the property grid. You know, in Visual Studio, you got that property grid that just shows a whole lot of random stuff in. They could have easily done that. Anyway. Anyway, don't worry about that. So, now you've got to learn which controls work. And there's a little bit of overlap with, the controls that you might be familiar with. Obviously, the most familiar control in ASP.NET is the grid. The grid gives you paging, editing, and it gives you no grouping and expanding, does it? Unless you're using RAD. Yep. The SharePoint content query doesn't give you paging, doesn't give you editing, but it does give you grouping. Okay? This is the control that most content editors, most knowledge workers use. Then you've got this data view. That gives you paging, editing, grouping, and expanding, but it's not in the box. Okay? You basically need the developers to configure this thing up. So you can use multiple data sources. That's not, the multiple data sources isn't what you would be used to with a grid view. It's pretty similar to the grid view. You can do this unions and joins, but you have to do the whole thing with SharePoint. Okay, so basically you come in here, you select the different data sources you want. You can select as many as you want, which unlike a grid where you usually select one. And then you get these type of things. Do you know what this is trying to tell you? Can anyone guess what this is trying to say? I had to look at it a number of times before I was trying to understand. What?
Like the contents one above the other.
Yeah, basically it's trying to explain to you a union, okay? Like why doesn't it say like help text or something for a developer? All you need to know is that this is a union or something. Anyway, you should see the image that you get for joining. Anyway, so you've got your right data now and you need to style this. So if you want it to look like this, you're not going to make it look like this out of the box. Okay, so you need to modify the XSL. You come through, you modify the XSL. Not much fun really. You've got to stop reminiscing. You know, for many years, I know there's only like 15 there, but those 15 lasted us forever. We were able to use that for hundreds of sites, but now we've got to, you know, you can come in here. This is what you get with SharePoint. You get this data view properties and you can choose styles, but it's weak. Anyway, this is what you got to do. To make it look decent, you got to create this thing, you got to publish to SharePoint, export it to a file, import it into the gallery. Let me just say that again. You create this thing on SharePoint Designer, you publish the thing, once it's published you export it to a file and then you import it back in. So there is some nice things. You can set up editing and stuff. So you come into the data view and you can click on edit, and when you, in this case I've clicked on edit and delete and not insert. When you do that, you basically get, when you're in display mode, see the first one, you get edit and delete there, and when you're in editing mode it says save and cancel. It's not ideal, but you get that. Happy with that? Obviously you need to widen these columns and fix them up a bit, but that's what you get out of the box. Good? You don't like it, Paul? No. It doesn't look pretty enough? Yeah. And you just make it pretty? XSL. Okay, so that's what we did to make that pretty. The repeater, let's look at another control. This is the projects. So this, let me just go to the page so you've seen it. I'll come in here. I'll show you a tiny bit of JQuery while we do it. So here we are on the country. This country is Australia. There we go. And we can click on the projects over here. And when this projects page loads, you'll see, we do a lot of stuff on the client. It's kind of, it's often easier than doing it in SharePoint because it's not just double click and write some C# code. So I've clicked on that project. And this is the page that I'm talking about. You know, they list all the different projects here. Where's the pictures? Come on. I'll go into one of these projects. So see those boxes there, just there? We didn't do that on the server, we do that on the client. So as the JQuery comes through, that will show the right image, and there it is. So this type of page is done. Let's talk about that. This is what I would think of as an ASP.NET repeater. All I want, it's very simple. I want the name, I want an image, and I want to link off to the right page. Doesn't get much simpler, does it? So what's the control you use? Huh?
Content query web part.
Perfect. You use that all the time. And here is the content query web part. Basically, it has one feature. It's pretty sexy. You can query across an entire site collection. When you first use it, you'll get, this is what that thing will look like. This is what that projects page would look like out of the box. You get the names here, but you don't get all the extra bits that it's missing the columns, the other columns. How do you make the content query web part show your custom columns that you've added? Anyone think?
Export.
Export. All right, you got the idea. Okay, they're not there. You basically you'll have a look and you go, where's my extra columns? Can't I tick something to show them? Well, no. You export the stupid thing out. You fix them up in here. There's the export menu. In this case, you had to show the these three fields that were missing in our case. The image, the abstract and rich HTML, and the release date. Okay, so that's what you do. Import it back in, make it look pretty with XSL, and then you upload your content query web part and you're done. So that's kind of how SharePoint development works. Then you see it in the gallery, you can use it 1,000 times now. That's the procedure. Not ideal, but pretty good.
So you exported it, you modified it where in design SharePoint?
Well,
how can you tell what it looks like?
you've got to import it, have a look. It's XSL. Yep. So, what did you say, Tim?
Oh, it doesn't look right. Let's re-import it.
Yeah.
So is it find any way of getting around it?
No, there's no way to get around it.
A little tool to do it and sell it off and make money.
That would be a great tool.
Because you're selling to developers.
And they don't have any money.
They love finding cracks. You know how we measure the success of our code auditor product? We look at a report that says code auditor cracks. And the more that is coming, we can see more people using it. All right. So, deploying. That is a whole session on itself, and I think that I would exhaust you explaining you what this is, but I'll give you an executive summary and we'll come back to this another session. Yes, Sergey.
If Microsoft released any service pack for SharePoint, will it affect your gallery of web parts?
A service pack could. There is no way to just do a compile all and check things, but in our case, a way that you could do it is run link auditor across the site, executing all the pages, and look in the event log and see if you've got any errors. It's one way of doing it. Tim, how would you test when you release a service pack?
Well, I think a few things we try and do is we'll never modify any of the built-in SharePoint, for example, CSS files. So when we change anything, we'll create our own files. And so they won't get replaced when the service pack comes down. And rather, our CSS files, for example, just have precedence in rendering, and their tags will get picked up. You know, if you are overwriting some existing style. Pretty much throughout SharePoint, not just CSS, but there are other things you could say.
All right, so deploying. There's a few issues in deploying. But here's the first issue. When you are dealing with developers, they are writing .NET code and they check it into TFS. When you have designers, so you have 4 developers, in this case there was 4 developers writing code in .NET, checking in source control. You had a series of designers that were there that were making things look pretty by doing images and CSS and JavaScript and all that crap. So they are working on one server, which is called a collaboration server, and they would use SharePoint Designer, connect to that server, make changes, etc. When you want to deploy this to a staging server, you need the files out of there and you need the stuff in TFS. There is no easy way to just say, run something that says grab it all and make a package so I can install. We wrote a tool which basically pulled that stuff out and pulled the stuff out of TFS and made a package. Okay, so we're working with Microsoft at the moment, and we might end up releasing that on Codeplex. We'll see how we go. But that's you've got to just know that problem. Now I told you there was a series of all-nighters. There's another thing that can happen. These files can exist on the file system or in the SharePoint database. If it exists in the database, it doesn't look at the files on the file system. So we never put anything in the database. We always just put it on the file system and we would copy it to the server. So we had our little tool that grabbed it all and we copy it over there. Every now and then when we want to make a tiny little change, we would get SharePoint Designer, connect to the staging server or the test server and modify something, and we'd fix that so it'd look nice. And then later on we would make some more changes over here. We'd grab this and put it over there. But sometimes our files didn't show. this thing is known as a ghosting problem. This ghosting problem can give you an all-nighter. It can give you 3 all-nighters actually. And this essentially, by touching the test server, now does anyone know what the problem is? What did we do wrong? Not you, Tim, but
That's not touching.
no, we didn't modify the wrong server. We did everything right. What was causing this? I'm calling it the ghosting problem because we've got the files there, but it's clearly not reading them. It's showing us an old version.
It's got a
Caching problem, but what's causing it? What did we do wrong?
It's in the database, not the file system.
It's in the data. We never put it in the database. We put it on the file system. It's not reading the files. The site is using the database version, but why? What did we do wrong? Yeah, but we didn't touch anything. Someone did. All we did wrong was we connected to that server with Office SharePoint Designer. That evil program should never, ever be allowed to touch a test, staging, or production server, even just to look. It creates a ghosting problem. Never, ever do it.
So what do you use to?
You only run your package, basically. You never just connect to have a look or do something. Is anyone, who's with me? Does everyone understand what I'm referring to? Yep.
So you use your collaboration server to connect to Office SharePoint Designer.
Use your...
You only connect via Office SharePoint Designer on your collaboration server.
Yes, the one they're working, the dev type server, the designers, what we give them, we call it a collaboration server. Okay?
So what's actually in the package?
What's in the package?
Yeah.
DLLs. It's got everything that's needed.
Web parts.
Yep, CSS, everything.
Yeah.
Images. Yep.
All the changes. And you can deploy that as well.
Yes, that's. You don't have to do everything in packages. It's more work, but we did everything that way, didn't we, Tim?
Yeah, I think they like to call them your SharePoint solutions. So you've got a bunch of features inside them. It's all the structural changes, like your CSS files and your DLLs and web parts.
I just wasn't sure if you're talking about a solution.
Yeah.
The only thing that gets done on production servers is content editors manage content through the web interface.
So the last update that Microsoft released for that, for SharePoint developers in Visual Studio, I think it includes support for team build. Do you know?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I think it did. So this process, if you run the latest stuff that was just released, you could do this a little bit nicer with team build probably. Okay. Anyway, debugging. Let's just talk about debugging. Remember this error? Troubleshoot the problem, open in Office SharePoint Designer, that evil program. If it persists, see your web server administrator. This silly process that you go through, crazy process. There is a better way of doing it than this. You can, have a look at here, you can just change this one setting, this call stat, and you can also turn custom. If you do those two, you're basically telling SharePoint to show the error rather than hide the stupid error. That's all you really need to do. It takes a long time to find that you can do this. Actually, the only way I found out about it is I read this South African blog. Now, I don't particularly like South Africans, usually, but this one guy, he is a legend. So he explains the whole thing and how it all works. It's pretty good. But you will find out that that this doesn't solve all of the problems because you can have a whole series. Oh, what did I do there? Oh, sorry. Yeah, basically, bear in mind that the layouts virtual directory has its own web.config, and if you create subsites, you're going to have to do the same thing in multiple places. Yes, and don't do this on a production or a test server, obviously. Yeah, no, this isn't a solution for that. Thank you. I answered your question. What's the solution for that?
Sorry, so then your package doesn't work, does it? Because aren't you then updating the layouts for your web.config via your package?
You wouldn't include these changes in your package.
Yeah, Web.config is a special case for deployment. You don't ever just copy web.configs between servers because you have unique, special machine IDs and stuff that happen in there. But SharePoint does actually have an API to make web.config changes automatically, which goes in and does things like inserts tags.
Okay. Yes.
So how do you debug on production?
How do you debug on production?
If you're going to
debug?
Find errors when you get some.
How do you find errors on production? Well, basically, you've got a couple of choices. You can have it log out to the event log, which usually isn't a good idea because you don't have permissions. The other way is looking in the Hive, which has the problems. Now, you can do something that makes your errors have a different file name, so they're easy to find. Okay? So, next tip in debugging. See this option here, diagnostic logging? You need to go into here, this event throttling, and you need to go through and set the categories to verbose, and then you will see the errors come here. But be very careful setting it to verbose because the files get big quick. You know, even in 10 minutes you can have a few hundred megs of this
we had an error
stuff.
the other day that was the hard drive was 20 megs heavy.
Say it again?
We had an error the other day was generating a 1 meg log file that was heavy.
1 meg a second. Yeah.
Like 15 gigabytes.
And you had it on verbose, did you?
No, it was just a problem that sets to time to.
We had that filled up 100 gig hard drive.
It was like 1,000 times.
While you were on verbose?
I was a developer.
All right.
So I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah, that's pretty sure that's what they did.
Yeah.
Anyway, be careful. But that is a way to quickly find out what the hell's going on. That's another way.
So
All right.
only when you have a problem.
Yeah, only when you have a problem, yes. So the next thing I would suggest is change the trace log. So you go into diagnostics logging again. See this trace log stuff down here? The default is 96 and 30. 96 log files every 30 minutes. Basically, it's easier just to make it 30 files and 5 minutes. Okay, that's what we ended up changing it to see what's going on. The log files are smaller, they're easy to find.
In distributed environment, do you need to do it on every cell?
Yes. Yes. When you've got problems, that's what you do. So, these are the debugging tools that we ended up using, Reflector, Fiddler, I develop a toolbar, and this Camel, this is a pretty good tool. There's a better one?
Yeah.
I'm all ears, tell me.
I can send you the link, but
Okay.
we were using the YouTube one.
Oh, right, okay.
And we switched.
Okay. Well, basically, you've got a little editor here, you've got a designer. It's quite nice. And then it's your query analyzer type thing. Okay? So, and then that's instead of writing your own Camel, which is an XML-based crazy query language.
It just doesn't tell you what you're doing wrong if you do something wrong.
Ah, right. Yeah. They need to include something like this if they're going to persist with that Camel crap. If you want real-time debugging what's going on, this SharePoint logging spy is the solution for that. Last things I want to just tell you about is performance. Now, all the performance stuff for Wally Parsons will happen in V2. But this is the stuff that we, well, this is the easy stuff to deal with first. So anonymous caching. So basically, to do anonymous caching, it's actually incredibly easy. You just check a checkbox. Okay, that's all you do. And you'll see in the HTML output, you'll see that. If I go view source, you'll see that at the very end. The other one, so that's it caches the HTML.
But why is it anonymous? What's the difference between normal caching? What's it do with anonymity?
I don't know. Do you know, Tim?
You basically have different profiles because, you know, let's say you have a logged in user, often there will actually be unique content like, you know, welcome, your usernames, and you can't cache that. It does have to be regenerated. Whereas under anonymous profile, you know that every anonymous user is going to have identical with the page. And so you'll see, in the drop down, say on that screen, you'll see that this is a particular profile just for public internet users. And there's a few other settings related just to this, to that profile. What it's doing is it's stopping you going back to the database because you don't need to. So it renders it once after talking to the database, and from then on it doesn't need to talk to the database for subsequent requests.
Okay, but what if, I mean, this is for a public website. What if on one occasion on the internet system, everyone's logging in, but it's the same concept?
So it has different profiles.
Yeah,
that you can
that's
have
the one
different
thing.
things. You can there will be different things that do get cached. I didn't actually look up the caching part, so I'm not the expert on this. But we might ask John before the next presentation.
Okay. All right. So moving on, that's the just the caching like ASP.NET. You can also do object caching, which will cache certain lists. You'll see that this object caching, you basically just change this setting here. That guy. Okay? So that's the object caching. Then you've got another one called the blob caching. And the blob caching will cache images and stuff, all these type of images. So you'll see all that stuff. Now, bottom line, this feature crops images. Mysteriously, the feature doesn't work, so turn it off. Forget it. Don't use it. Okay. Next one, you can... has anyone else got any other experiences? Has anyone even tried this? Okay, obviously we are the first people in the world because it doesn't work. HTTP module, you can basically, this is nasty, I'm probably not just, I probably shouldn't even recommend this, but you could write your own HTTP module and write some .NET code that strips strips all the HTML. I wouldn't recommend, but you could if you were looking for more performance. We can use IIS compression, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No problems.
I think, yeah. Yeah, I'd be surprised if it's not being used. We're not in charge of the production server. Obviously, we can't go near the production server. That production server is Wally Parsons, and it's in Canada. And now there is some other solutions that you can consider. One is RPO. It's from a company called Intergen in New Zealand. And basically, what that does... Actually, Chris is going to be here. Chris Old is coming, so... No, let me just...
We'll be presenting at the CRM user group.
So yeah. So anyway, if you want to talk about this, the man behind it is here. But the long story short is you end up with, oh, that's what I'll do. Okay, so you end up with a lot of view state. And if you want to clean it up or compress it, their RPO product does that on a software level. Peter, do you want to add any more to that?
The website I look is getrpo.com. It's not actually ever to spin off the so it works, you can install it as a HTTP handler or as an ISABI filter. And I was going to demo it, but I had problems for the last minute, so I need time to fix it. The website's really good. You can put in your URL to your site and it'll generate a report. It takes about 5 minutes because they do it quite a lot. And they'll send you a PDF and tells you how much improvement we'll get using RPO. How much does it cost? $7.95 US per server. Within sites as well.
Now it is a software solution. If you want a hardware solution to do a very similar problem plus more, there's this product called Strange Loop, which is a hardware device, and it basically strips out the view state as it's going through and puts it back as it's coming back out. That's kind of how that works. So you know, consider those. We haven't used them. We did try RPO. We did have what was the problem we had with it?
It was really early days of RPO, and there were a few problems on some pages where just images and things just wouldn't get rendered. one of the performance things it does is it tries to create these CSS sprites. So it will combine a whole lot of image requests into one image, which will then sort of selectively display on the page. It cuts down the number of requests between the client browsers. So we've done some things in it. And I think the recommendation at the time was stuff that doesn't work, you can actually put exceptions in, say, your web.config, so that on problem pages it won't, RPO won't get involved.
Okay.
So when it worked, was it a lot faster?
It was faster, yeah.
Mm. Okay. Let me just talk about a few things that I wish SharePoint did. So I'm just saying my magic ball for SharePoint 2014 is this. I want to have nice URLs. I hate pages in the URL. I hate not having full control over what the URL is going to be. And I'm, the whole thing. MVC's URLs are absolutely awesome. And they have this thing in the system.web.routing. I want all that stuff in SharePoint so I can control it myself. And do you know why I care about this so much? SEO is number one. Number two, navigation. I want to chop off a bit to go back a section, So, that's important to me. Camel, what is this crap? Why did they invent this? Why didn't they just, I'd like them to ditch it and just do link to SharePoint. Much better for me. One small thing, this is probably crazy, I just want the PC. I want the PC that the change happened on, the name of it. Just this checkout, I prefer to be able to just view what it's looking like at the moment, what settings they have. I don't want to edit it, I just want to see what they're doing. This name, this is kind of crazy. Well, first of all, I don't want it there on a public site. I want to check a checkbox. I don't want to have to use a HTTP module to strip out that core, strip it out in core.js. I just want to check our checkbox, turn that thing off. Plus, I'd like them to rename it from name to presence or something. Only because I didn't know what it meant. Name DLL. What is this? I want a built-in web stats. I want it as good as Google Analytics. Built in there. Anyway, any other things? I've got a lot more, but I didn't want to keep carrying on.
One thing I do.
Yep.
Take SharePoint off the Office team and do it for the developer version. You've written one thing. Just too many things wrong.
So get rid of the Office Designer.
Well, yeah, they seriously need to fix the Office Designer. Oh, and I also want everything to be scriptable. Plus, I want a button that says, or a mode that goes, record what I do. And I go in and I add a web part, and then it generates the script that would do that on production. Someone should write that. Anything else anybody would want? All right. Anyway, all right, so we covered a fair bit. Hopefully you got a few tips. We covered why companies want SharePoint. I talked about how to make it sexier, basically depointing SharePoint. Reducing the number of tables is just a few little fixes, and you've got divs galore. Why we want cross-browser compatibility, or how you do it with JQuery. How you make a site come alive. Which web parts to use and what you need to customize. How to deploy, didn't really cover that, I'll cover that later. A few tips on debugging, a few tips on performance, and a few things I'd like. So I'm going to finish off with my last one, and this is SharePoint, a little bit cooler than you think it is.
Hi, I'm a Mac.
And I'm a PC. Hey Mac, what are you up to this weekend?
Oh, some really cool stuff. I'm working on a video for my Ultimate team. Then I'm recording some music in my basement. What are you doing?
Well, I'm going to be taking a bit of time off. I'm spending the weekend skiing with a friend. Oh, and who are you hanging out with?
All right, so a few resources. This is my favorite blog, SharePointJoel.com. Last two things, that's my email address. If you send me an email, please put a subject on it like attend to the user group, because I get a lot of email. Thank you very much. Before you go, I've got a task for you. Go to tv.ssw.com and subscribe to our newsletter. You'll be informed of all upcoming videos. In addition, if you're super keen, I'm all about inspecting and adapting. So send me an email or send me a tweet @Adam Cogan. Cheers.